Chapter 1. The Uninvited Guests. The house was unusually quiet for a Sunday afternoon. I'd left my nephew Jake and his best friend Ethan alone in the kitchen while I ran a quick errand. It wasn't unusual for Jake to visit. He was practically family, always full of laughter and mischief. Ethan, his pal since middle school, was quieter, more reserved, but equally charming in his own way. When I returned, I noticed something strange. The kitchen door was slightly ajar, and there was an odd mix of giggles and hushed voices spilling out. I assumed they'd tried their hand at some experimental cooking. It wouldn't be the first time they left a mess for me to clean up. "Hope you two didn't burn my kitchen down," I called as I stepped inside. But what I walked into wasn't a culinary experiment. Jake was standing near the counter, his face pale as a sheet, while Ethan quickly buttoned his shirt. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. And there she was, Claire, my wife, flushed, disheveled, and unmistakably guilty. Chapter 2. A Shattered Reality. For a moment, time stood still. The spatula I had just picked up clattered to the ground. Jake opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. Claire's eyes darted between me and the two boys, her face an unreadable mix of fear and shame. "Jake. Ethan. Get out," I said, my voice low and trembling. They hesitated, but the steel in my voice made them scurry out the door. Only Claire and I remained in the suffocating silence of the kitchen. What the hell just happened? My voice rose, fueled by disbelief and anger. Claire didn't respond immediately. She didn't have to. The truth was already seared into my brain. It was a mistake," she stammered, her voice cracking. "I don't know what came over me." "You don't know?" I cut her off, my hands trembling. "My nephew? A child compared to you? And his best friend? What kind of a monster?" My voice broke, unable to finish the sentence. Claire started to cry, but her tears only stoked the flames of my rage. I couldn't stay in the same room with her. Grabbing my keys, I stormed out, slamming the door behind me. Chapter 3. Confrontation. I spent the next hour driving aimlessly, trying to make sense of it all. When I finally returned home, Jake was waiting on the porch. He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes, guilt etched deep into his young face. "Uncle, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Didn't mean for what to happen?" I shot back, my words like venom. "You betrayed me, both of you." "It wasn't like that," Jake pleaded. "It started as a joke. Ethan dared me to flirt with her. I didn't think it would go this far." His words sent a fresh wave of disgust through me. My wife, a grown woman, had entertained their childish games and taken them to a level I couldn't fathom. I didn't want to hear any more excuses. "Stay away from this house," I said coldly, "and tell Ethan the same." Chapter 4. The Aftermath. In the days that followed, the house felt like a hollow shell. Claire tried to apologize, to explain, but nothing she said could undo what had been done. I moved into the guest room, unable to bear the sight of her. Jake's parents, my sister and her husband, were devastated when I told them the truth. Jake and Ethan were shipped off to separate schools, their friendship abruptly severed. My sister begged me not to press charges against Claire, and though my anger screamed otherwise, I relented. For now. But forgiveness wasn't an option. Not for Claire, not for Jake, not for Ethan. I filed for divorce within a month, packing up the remnants of my life and leaving the house we'd built together. Chapter 5. Rebuilding. A year later, I stood in a new kitchen, a smaller, humbler one, but one that was entirely my own. It wasn't easy to let go of the betrayal, the anger, or the shame. But every step I took away from that chapter of my life felt like a step toward healing. Jake and I hadn't spoken since that day. I wasn't sure if we ever would. As for Claire, she sent letters occasionally, but I never read them. The trust had been shattered beyond repair, and there was no piecing it back together. The new kitchen was quiet now, but it was a peaceful quiet, the kind I had missed. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again.